There's nothing more natural than our instinct to survive. Within our culture, this instinct is supported by our sense of family, community, traditions, and spirituality. Despite generations of abuse endured by assimilation policies, the residential school experience, and a lifetime of adjusting to a foreign and rapidly changing world, our ancestors have found a way to survive. The elders of the Squamish Nation Residential School Committee have shown their strength and determination to be voices of the generations. The following is an account of their memories, their histories, and their experience. They speak of the multi-generational grief that continues to plague our families, relations, and communities. As well, they give hope to the healing that must ultimately take place for the future of healthy communities. These elders are a testament to that healing.
5 o'clock this morning, you should have been up here. Nice over there. Look at green coyotes. Shirley used to be Moody. Me Moody. Shirley Tillman now. I went to St. Paul's Residential School in North Vancouver. And I was there for 5 years. Then I ran away. I got free. I was in there when I was 9 until I was about 14. Horrendous years. Some happy, a lot of sad. Too much sad and too much bad memories.
I was Bob Baker. I went to Alert Bay Residential School, St. Mike's. Went there in the early 40s. I stayed there till 48, 49, something around there. And I had lots of bad memories of that residential school and lots of good memories of all the people I met that are still around. And they took us away from home right here in the Squamish Valley where I grew up with my grandmother. And all this river here, we had lived on this river.
My name is Eleanor Andrews. I was born up at Sliammon. Went to school there maybe for a couple days. And we moved back to Squamish. And police caught up with us and told my parents that we had to go to school. And they sent me to Seashell Residential School. Most of us, we had some good times in school, but most of it was not that good. I guess because they didn't understand us and we couldn't understand their ways. I spent 6 years in residential school, so I hardly know my parents or my relatives. I'm just now beginning to know them. And I hope that this will work.
Hello, it's Joseph. I went to St. Paul's School. I was there for 4 years. They used to take us for long walks, and they gave us small shoes, small size than what we use. So I got big bunions from going through. A lot of us had big bunions. And my kid says, "Why don't you go through an operation and fix?" I told him I'm too old now. Who cares what my feet looks like now? I'm old. I said, I'm not going to go suffer for nothing. I know I got punished once because my girlfriend told me to say this Indian word. I don't know what I said, but I repeated it. Got slapped in the face and we had to go stand in the corner for a whole week. And they used to give us our lunch was half an apple or half a carrot and plain bread. That was our lunch. And after school. That's all.
My name was Margie Reed when I was in St. Paul's School. The priest came to our house one day and he seen me. He asked my mother who I was. My mother says, "That's Margie, my daughter." He said, "Why isn't she in school?" He says, "Oh no, can't go to school. I was sickly and she really had to take care of me. I didn't have to do anything at home. I didn't have to wash dishes or anything. And my parents never got mad at me. But they're the ones that are my teachers. That's my mother, Mary Reed and James Reed. I learned everything from them when I was coming into 8, 7. But the priest says, "Well, if you don't go to school, you'll have to go to jail." Oh my God. I felt so bad. I didn't know what jail was, but I was too young. I didn't know how old I was. I must have been about 11 or something. So I went to school and there was nothing great about it. Food was bad for one thing, and other things I can cope with, but food I couldn't eat that. I wouldn't eat it. Give it to my cousin Bernice Lewis. She used to eat most of our whatever it was we were eating. But I stayed in school 2.5 years and got TB. Sent me to the hospital, St. Paul's Hospital. They found I had TB and said I was only going to live 6 weeks. My mother found out about Indian medicine and that's what she gave me. And I was in bed for 2.5 years, I guess. Indian medicine she gave me saved my life. She's a very strong lady. I loved my mother. The doctor says, ask what kind of medicine. He says, "Oh no, that is just for my daughter. I can't give it to you." My doctor died. And I'm still here. Okay.
My name is Laura Williams. But I was very lucky when the Indian agent in Rupert came to the house and asked my dad to send me to residential school. And my dad told him no, he said, "My daughter's not going to no residential school." I never forget it. I must have been about 8 years old at that time. And then that Indian agent kept after my dad how I'd be well educated if I go to Port Alberni or Lerdo, whichever he chose. And then my dad spoke up, said, "No," said, "I am the chief in the village here." Said, "What I said goes." so he kept me home. But that Indian agent just got up and grabbed his hat and went out of the house. That's why I say I was really lucky. He never sent me, because he himself was in a residential school, and so was my dad, and so was my auntie. Quite a few of them from home were there, and they knew what it was like. That's why they never sent me there. Thanks to him. Thanks to him.
I grew up here in this valley, right in the middle of that river there was where we used to have our longhouses. And stay in Squamish there, they had all longhouses there. You know, it doesn't seem very long ago since we came out of those longhouses. The way the non-natives, like the government, when they took us out of the longhouse, they gave us a 2-room shacks. And then they left us there for 40 years, 40, 50 years. Then they took that away and they give you a 3-room shack. And that made you feel real good until you look outside the door and then there's somebody else over there's got a 4-room. That was the changes. It took Squamish Valley we were about 50 years behind all, you know, like from the Vancouver. But we liked the way we lived. You know, we weren't going to go fast for nobody. We'd go our own pace. And I love, this is about the best country that, you know, for being free. When I went to that school, it seems like I didn't keep in time with how old I was or where I was going. You know, you just kind of forget all these. You didn't want to know. Right? So I came home to Caplano a couple of times. And I got back and my grandmother was already gone. She passed away. One thing that they didn't do is let you go out when any of your families passed away. They held you. And my grandmother, I never found out she passed away until about a year later. I wanted to come home here to Squamish, and she's got nothing to go there for no more. It's gone. So each month they give you a piece of paper and they say, well, you write this letter, and they put it on the board for you, and you got to write down what they put on that board. You know, like dear father, and so I'm having a good time here, and would you send me some money or send me something to eat? And, you know, whatever they can get away with in that school, they wouldn't put it on that board. They put what you had, what they wanted us to say to our parents. So I had to send that letter to Caplano, or I don't know if anybody read it. I don't know if it reached there or not. But it was just an everyday thing every month thing that you had to do. When I turned home, I stayed out of this valley for 17 years. When I got back here, I always dreamt to come back to this valley where we grew up, where my great-grandmother stayed along the river. She had a longhouse. It was closed down by the government before that, but it was still there. And then the river took it away. But I figured, well, one of these days I'm going to go back to Squamish and build there. It took me 17 years of just living off the street in Vancouver, drunk and don't care where you're going to go. It was forgotten a lot of times. Like, the only thing that really happened to me was getting beat up and all that. And when I came out of school, and I didn't want to see that no more. every time I saw somebody that I didn't like, I went over there and punched them on the head, because that's the way we were taught. We were taught to hate people. Everything we done was hate. We never had no good teaching in us from any of our people. Even when I got out, they just laughed at us. They said we were a bunch of drunks, our own people, and because that's the only thing we knew. That residential school is the only way we could forget about it. Is keep on drinking. I fished and I drank, fished and drank, but I never really knew how to even talk to a girl, because you never learned that in school. You had to be drunk to talk to anybody. So it carried on that way. When I married my wife, I proposed when I was drunk. I took her away when I was drunk. And after I got to Squamish here, I took her right home here. And we lived around here, and she felt kind of lost, but I think she got to know all my relations here in the valley. But she done the same thing as anybody else did. She got lonely for her own people. And she started to drink, and she drank herself right down until she passed away. She killed herself with booze. And I was still going. I thought I had nothing to live for after that. So I just kept on going, and finally somebody told me, you better cut that out, because you still got kids. I had 4 children, Christine and Harold and Brenda and Danny to look after. And there were 2 of them were just 7, 8 years old when their mother was gone. So I thought back, I said, I don't want things to happen to them that happened to me. I was lost out in this world that nobody wanted me. That's the way I figured. But these last, since I sobered up 20 years ago now, and it's been real bothering me, like, to see my kids doing the same thing, and I couldn't stop them. Now that the residential school is coming out, and they knew what was happening there. My 2 daughters, and my son, and said we don't want that to happen to our children anymore. We want to cut that chain right there and live our life the way we should. All culture and learn our languages back. I found out later that my mother was from Malheur Bay, and it took me a long time to start contacting my own relations around there. Even today I have a hard time, but I'm putting it together. That's just the way it's going to be, so I can pass it on to my children.
Getting there, it looked like a prison. And then seeing those nuns all in black, that really scared me. I was 7 years old, and my dad brought me, and I was hanging onto my dad's legs, and I told him I didn't want to go, and the nun grabbed me and told me I had to stay, that my dad had to go and catch the boat back. I was crying, and my older sister was there, but the nuns wouldn't let her come and comfort me. I had to go where the little children were, and I didn't know any of them. So that was scary. It took a while for me to get used to residential school. It seemed so restricted. I couldn't go, anywhere I felt like it. When I was home, I was one of these people that just, if I wanted to go somewhere, I just took off and went, and Mom and them never worried about me because they know I'd come home. But in school, you couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. Even if you were sick, they never phoned your parents, or they never told them. Because when I was sick with rheumatic fever, they never phoned my mom and them. I was very ill. Mm-hmm.
And they just put me in bed and left me there. And I was lucky if I got a meal. Oh yes, there was lots of punishment. And we couldn't speak our language. If we did, we got punished. And if we talked about what went on in our ways of Squamish living, that was frowned upon too. We were supposed to forget it all. All depend on what teacher or what nun, was there. You either got the strap or you had to kneel in front of the kids with your arms outstretched, which they did to me very often. They didn't prepare us for any kind of jobs. But I found a job by going to Kokalitsa and working as a maid. That was the easiest because we didn't have to, have any education to sweep a floor. That we were good at because we did that in residential school. And, tell you the truth, I don't even know what I felt like. I wasn't Indian and I wasn't white. And trying to live in both worlds was really hard. My dad had his way of doing things and I had my way, my new way of thinking anyway. So it was really hard. That's why I left home. My dad said that if I couldn't listen to him, that I had to leave. I met my husband while I was working at Kokalitsa. I was with him for 7 years, and we adopted my son, James. I think during those 7 years of marriage, I didn't even know how to be a wife. I didn't know what was expected of me, because in residential school, they don't prepare you for that kind of life, because all they preach is that you can't love people. They seem to just preach negativity. But I married him and we stayed together for 7 years. We adopted my son. And I left him and I adopted another little girl, my son's sister. And on them, it was hard for them because I couldn't hold them to me. I couldn't tell them I loved them as often as I should have. It was just after we started talking about residential school that things start registering in my head as to why I was like that. They had a hard time too, expressing their love for people. But I think that's changed now that we're able to talk about what went on with us in residential school. And we understand one another now because we're able to talk about things. Before I couldn't talk to my daughter. I'd, push her away and tell her, well, Not now, some other time. But it never came to that time. But now I have more time for her and for my grandchildren. I'm able to hold them and tell them I love them. And for all my friends now, I'm not scared to go and give anybody a hug and tell them I love them. That's what they prevented or tried to in residential school, it seems. They didn't seem to want us to know one another, to love one another. So it was hard for me growing up and then leaving school, not knowing really who you are and what's expected of you. So it was a hard thing, and I'm glad that we're able to talk about it now. It's released the hurt in.
Nobody told me how it was going to be when I got there. You always had that anticipation that, oh, gee, they got paper all over the place, they got coloring books, and they got lots of crayons. And it looks like everybody's having fun at recess and, at lunchtime and after supper. Looks like everybody's really having a lot of fun. And you think going in there with that idea and then having to live there with all this abuse going on, it's, it's just a contradiction everywhere you go. It's, people just going from one side to the other, and I think that it's such a confusing place to be that it's just not comfortable. You can't really live, you just survive. And if you survive, you're halfway there, and I'm hoping that my survival is going to bring me into where I can teach other people how not just to survive, but to live the life that they'd love to have and love to give. A new nun came into this school, and all she did was pat me on the head, and she says, "Oh, how were we doing today?" And I thought, gee, she really likes me, And I thought, oh, gee, I'm going to be real good friends of hers, and I would act like, she was, I don't know, my sister or my relative, and treat her real nice. And then one day she punished me for something, and it was just something so silly. I can't even remember what it is now. And she treated me like I was dirt, and I couldn't understand that. That's what I mean. The contradictions were just so strong that it was so confusing, and you just got so I don't know. I don't know how to put it. You just got so confused that you didn't know where you were from one minute to the next, and how the next person around the corner was going to be treating you. And of course, it depended on if you were a chief's child or not. You've got to treat it a little better. And I guess you got away with a few more things than we could possibly. Mm-hmm. But everyone had to be up and doing chores, and sometimes they were pretty strenuous when you have to scrub the stairs with a toothbrush. I mean, that's going a bit too far, I think. Or scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush. That's ridiculous. Because it wasn't done properly the first time, and you didn't get into the corners, so they gave you a toothbrush, and you had to wash the corners and wash in between the tiles and get all the dirt from in there. And then you had to scrub with a big brush after, and it was just sometimes ridiculous, Mm-hmm. And you didn't do that type of thing at home. If your mother wanted you to scrub the floor, she would ask you, kindly, do you want to help me do this, and you want to help me do that? In school, you were told, you go and scrub that floor, and this is how you do it, and they give you a brush and a pail and the soap in it. And they didn't tell you how to do it, or they didn't show you how to do it. You just had to go and do it. If I wanted to go and see my cousins, and you couldn't talk to them, because they thought if you were going to go over and talk to your cousin over there, and he was a good-looking guy, which didn't matter to me because he was my cousin, but they thought if he was good looking and you were going to go over and talk to them, that you were going to go over there and have sex with him or something. I suppose that was what was in their minds, because they were all nuns, and and they, I guess they had that on their mind, so they wouldn't allow us to go and talk to our cousin. And I slept with most of my cousins since we were babies. I used to, and go and visit somebody, and I'd be sleeping in 4 of us and 5 of us in the bed sometimes, and and I'm going to go over and talk to him and have sex with him. I mean, that's ridiculous. This is, I couldn't understand their thinking at the time. I can now, but the ridiculous thoughts that they had in their minds were beyond my thinking, and it was just crazy. They learned a lot of bad things in that school, and some of the girls would treat us pretty bad, because they'd get us in a corner, all the young students, and they would pretend to be teaching us how to say the prayers from the Bible, and they would try to fondle us. And I think that was taught to them by the nuns or by somebody else. But that was pretty bad, I thought. But that's one thing I wouldn't let them do. I wouldn't let them touch me. So I never went in that corner again with them, because they were always trying to pretend to be teaching us how to do the prayers and all that, and they were touching you instead. It was really, so that's what was taught in the schools. That this is what, it's not all right to go and see your cousin, but if you can sit in a corner and say prayers and let somebody touch you, it's fine. It just the word, it was just so mixed, and it was so confusing. After you've been in school for that many years, you don't know how to be a sister, you don't know how to be a brother, a mother, anything. You're just an individual, and you're kind of, you're kind of with yourself, and just not being related to anybody anymore. Well, except for my cousin and I, we're really close. She's still my confidant. I can go to her and talk to her about anything, and she shares a lot with me as well. I know there's a lot of education out there for people who have been abused, but I don't know if our children know how we've been abused. I'm hoping that this video, with all the help of the other elders, will help some, but I think there needs to be more, because I can't talk as a man on how I was raped. I can talk as myself and say that, the girls in the school were touching me, and that I had gotten looks from the priest or the brothers and all that. I can say that this is what happened to me. But I know that there are a lot of men out there who were raped and beaten and treated a lot worse than we were. So I think there is a lot of information out there that my children and my grandchildren should find out about and see what we went through. And I think that if they know that, then they'll know why I wasn't that close, that I could give my children hugs and kisses and be a real mother like I wanted, and why I can't even talk to them about a lot of things, because we weren't taught to do that in school. That was taken away from us. My mother, my grandmother were residential school people too, so they weren't taught how to do that either. So it's already been taken away from me before I even went to school, before I was even born. And now we have to start building it back up again and seeing if we can get strong. And I hope that our younger generation is out there, and that they are going to find out more about it and learn, and don't teach their children the way we did. Be more loving and understanding and close, Be the mother or the father that you want to be, not, or that you would like to have.
Well, my mother brought me to school, St. Paul's, North Van. I was very nervous because I was only about 10 and a half, I think. Because I knew I was going to get left there, but I didn't know what it was all about. Eh? Well, I thought it was going to be nice, you know, I was going to learn how to read or something. Excuse me. But I was scared, you know, I was going to be left there. I've never been away from my mother, you know, for so long. But I know I had to go to school because the priest said I had to go to school. Otherwise, they'd put them both in jail, so I wouldn't have that done to my parents. So I tried to be brave, you know. It was a dismal looking thing, you know, big, and it didn't look nice.
How did you feel?
I felt scared. You see kids running around. But I didn't know them, you know. Like those kids anyway. I only had one blanket. It was cold and the bed was just like sleeping on the floor. It wasn't a nice bed like mine at home. So then they locked us in at night. And I don't know why they did that. They locked us in a dorm. Then we had to go to the bathroom in a little can, which I didn't like too much. I don't know why they locked us in. We weren't going anywhere. No, I didn't like them. No, I didn't like the priest or the nuns because I could see they were mean. You know, they were mean to girls that couldn't learn, you know, right away.
Yeah. How were they mean to them? What did they do?
Pardon?
How were they mean to them?
We slapped them, you know.
Is that right?
Or if you wet the bed, you know, you'd have to carry that mattress all day on your back to dry it off. You know, well, I didn't wet my bed, but, you know, I could see how mean they were. I didn't like it. We'd go and have our breakfast, you know, to be porridge, you know. And I couldn't eat that because when you did this to it, just slimy, you know, just coming right from your bowl, and oh, I couldn't eat that, you know. I wasn't treated like that at home. But I had to eat that because the nuns are there, you know, they're watching you. There was a basin down the other end of the table, you know, that you can throw your food away if you wanted to. So, well, one day I thought I'd, you know, throw it because I just didn't want it. I wouldn't eat it. So I went down there, threw my porridge in there. There was some in there already. Nun caught me. She brought all that basin back to me and she poured it on my bowl and told me to eat it. And made me stand up on a bench. It was there. You know, the boys were watching. They were down the other side there. Everybody was watching. I felt terrible, you know. I never had that kind of treatment at home. I was never slapped or anything like that. I felt so bad, you know. Well, I felt worse if I had to eat that, you know, that somebody else's porridge. It was terrible because I lost my parents' teaching, the good things that my parents taught me. And I learned nothing in school but badness and hate and, you know, all the bad things that I wasn't even taught, you know. You'd have to go to confession and confessing to what? I didn't do anything. I didn't even know what to confess. The priest would, you know, tell me what to say. They say, did you have bad thoughts about your sister? You know, and well, I'd have to say, yeah, even though I didn't have bad thoughts like that. I wasn't taught that way, to be thinking bad things. I didn't even know what bad things were. Well, I was only 10 and a half, crumb. But I learned bad things in that school, you know. They taught me bad things. To hate, and not only the nuns, but there was girls there, you know, that when you got a lot of girls in one place, you know, you're going to have little fighting and other things, you know. It's so hard for me. I don't like talking about my life at the residential school. It hurts too much. And that's why I said they better put it in camera or something. Every time I have to talk about it, it just breaks me up inside. Because my both parents are gone now. There's nobody left but me and my children that I'm trying to save. I'm 70 years old now. I know I'm going to lose my son. I feel bad for it, but I got my daughters, they're here, you know. I already lost one son that committed suicide in the river, and he didn't even tell me nothing. That's why it's all at school's fault, you know. That's what I said, you know, it's not good. And I think the government should pay for what they've done to me and my mother and everybody, you know. You should pay us for destroying us like what they done. The priests too, you know. Nobody believes in that no more. The priest or nun or anybody. They don't honor anything. I feel so bad. Well, the young people are now, my daughter is listening. They know what they done to us, and not my fault, you know, not. I thought it was. Blamed myself for all those years that I grew, you know. I thought I destroyed my children, you know. I never told them nothing. Just kept it to myself.
I know that you're talking to your children.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
What's it like between you now and the children?
Yeah, I did tell my daughter, you know. And then sometimes they're with me, my oldest one.
Yeah.
She feels bad because she went to Seashell school for a couple of years and she got that kind of treatment too. And she's only 48. She went to Seashell school. So there's children in that age went to school too, you know, got hurt. And her daughter's, you know, she's a grandmother. Well, we're trying to show love. It's just kind of hard.
I can remember when they first started this, and I told them, you know, I really didn't have a bad experience in school because that's all I knew. I accepted. Everything that they did, I accepted. And I can remember when I was, I never went home in the summertime like the other kids did. The other kids went home for the summer months, for July and August, but I didn't go. No, I lost a sister. My youngest sister died when I was in there, and we weren't allowed to go. They just told us, your sister died. My two grandmothers died. My great-grandmother died. My grandmother died. They just told me, your grandmother died. Your great-grandmother died. They didn't send us home. So, you know, really, we just lost contact. You know, complete contact of that family that I had in Caplina. Yeah, it took a lot away. We were put in this little fenced area, and I was in this little fenced area for 8 years. You know, we were allowed as a group to walk down the village and come back. And that's just an island, 7 miles around the island. And that was my environment, that was my world. I didn't know anything about the world outside that little island. And until I was 13. But, this taking something away was really traumatic in my later life because I lost contact with my whole family, even my father, where there was no bonding between my sister, my brother, and myself and our father. So that was taken away. And they took away the freedom. The freedom for me to walk to somebody and talk to them. Everybody was strange, alien to me, except in my Alert Bay family. Everybody else, because we lived in this little world of our own. Boys, my brother, couldn't even come and visit me. I couldn't even talk to my brother. Boys and girls were separated. And my brother we had to have permission to see my brother on one day a week, and that was Sunday, for about an hour. And that's the only contact I had with my brother. My sister and I were close because we were always together in that same environment. I was 13 years old when I left the school, but I didn't go because of finishing school. I went because I got tuberculosis. And my mother had it when we were young, so we eventually got it from her, I guess. And when I went to Kukulitsa Hospital, and I was 13 years old, and I was 16 when they were going to discharge me. The only reason I left Kukulitsa because the hospital burned. But Dr. Barkley was the main doctor there, and he told me, you can go home now, Gwen. He brought me in the office and says, you can go home now, you're all better. And I didn't want to go. I cried. I wanted to go back to school. That was my home. That's where I grew up. And I cried. So what he did was, he gave me a little job in there, because that was my other home. That's going from one institution to the next. And I met older people in Kukulitsa. I met married women, and we all stayed, all women on one side, the same thing. But they were all older than me. And so when they discharged me from there, supposed to discharge me from there, I begged not to go home. And I asked them if I could work there, and he gave me a job, 10 cents an hour job. But he made sure I ate my 3 square meals a day. I was not allowed to save money. And he made sure like the girls that work in there, pool all their money. They'd rather go hungry than buy clothes and eat, so that's what they did. And he wouldn't let me do that. I had to have my 3 square meals a day. But then the hospital burned, and that's when they sent me home, and it's just like a different environment. I wasn't used to that small, comfortable family life that everybody had. One thing, it's not only I find it's not only the residential school children that got the most traumatic in their life, it's also the first generation. Because the first generation that went to the public school, it's very hard for them, especially the older ones. It was all new to me, it was all new to my husband, and they just had to, we had to adjust to something. Some of us did it. We had to adjust to a different lifestyle to help our children adjust to the lifestyle that we were giving them, And it's just hard on the first generation that went to public school too. I just wanted to share that. I'm still learning. Even at my age, I'm still learning. And that's life. You still learn as you grow older, as long as you want to keep that mind open to learn and that heart I'll say the heart and the mind's connected together. And when I cry, and when I cry and I talk, I know that's true because I'm feeling it here and I'm also feeling it here. Because the words is coming from my mind, but my feelings coming from my heart and they connected. Because there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of hurt that, when you go back and think of what happened, there's a lot of hurt, but I'm trying not to live in that past. I don't want to dwell on it. My past is my past. My past is my history, and I don't want to dwell on it. I'm bringing it up now to share, but I'm not bringing it up to feel sorry for myself. If I feel sorry for myself, it'll stay with me and it'll dwell in me. Right now, I got my feelings connected right now with my mind and my heart. But like I say, we have to share. That's why we're doing this. We have to share. But it's not going to stay with me. Once I leave here, I'm going to go back to living for today and how I feel today. And that's how I believe everybody should live. It's good to share. And that's what we're doing.